Alrighty, so this is my third attempt on doing this presentation. So I am Hunter, and I go to the Bethel Extension site at Pathway Community Church. And my question that I chose to pose to myself, or through the different options, was the internet, is it help or is it harm? So the question is the internet making us stupid? I believe the original question is Google making us stupid? But through the research papers and even the article itself, equated Google to internet. The internet is a simpler way to go about it than Google, because Google is simultaneously uh, like both a broad and a very specific subject. Broad in that Google is everywhere, whether it's YouTube or like an entire internet browser, while it's also hyper specific because the internet is more than just Google, it's Firefox. I digress. So the two people who argue for and against in the article that I read was Nicholas Carr and Peter Norvig, in which Nicholas asserted that human intelligence is about how deeply we think, not how much information we can obtain. Uh, and through that, we can only think deeply when our minds are calm. And the internet slash Google, same thing, leaves us mentally scattered through the overstimulation of information, messages, and ads on the websites. Thus, the internet is making us stupid because we're not thinking deeply. Novik takes a different approach. So he compares the internet to writing, in that new technology has its advocates and its critics. So Socrates wasn't a fan of writing because he thought it would cause forgetfulness in learners. He was wrong. Writing actually enhances memory. So Google is the new technology in this analogy, and because 81% of experts say that the benefits outweigh the cost of using the internet is a good thing and advances human society. And just as Socrates was wrong for disapproving, or was dis, yeah, Socrates was disapproving of the new technology that was writing. In the same way, those who argue that there are drawbacks to the internet are wrong, and thus the internet is advancing the human race. My dissertation is people were able to remember a vast swath of information, from telephone numbers to street routes to even multiplication, uh, back in the good old days. In the age of information, storage of these things that were once ingrained into our minds have been transferred into a tiny brick in our pockets, also known as a phone. And now we now need to remember less because we rely on technology to do it for us. And thus, the internet is hindering the growth of the human mind. So, some of the proof and its objectives is that because we rely on the internet for so much, we have abandoned the use of our mind in favor of having instant information at our fingertips. So, in the case of memory and knowledge, there was a test that was done using uh, internet based keywords and simple trivia questions. So, in the findings found, right, is that redundancy is redundant. They found that uh, when there were internet-based keywords implemented into the trivia questions, that it hindered their response time. Quote, not knowing the answer, even when answers are known, not knowing the answer to general knowledge questions primes the need to search for an answer, and subsequently, computer-based interference is particularly acute. That pretty much says that because people were using, or because we use the internet so much to gather information, if there's a question that we don't know, we automatically go for the internet to solve whatever problem that we have. Additionally, I believe his name is Peter Wegner, uh, did a similar study, and he found that the internet has become essentially a part of a transactive memory source method by which we, aka our brains, compartmentalize information. An example of transactive memory is I don't tend to remember dates and times well, but my fiance does. So if I know that there's a dinner coming up with the Johnsons, right? Uh, I won't know the time, or the location. So I'll ask my fiance and be like, "Oh, hey, when are we having the dinner with the Johnsons?" And she'll give the response. So while it's not something that I actively know or have memorized, it's something that I have almost intimate access to, right? I It's knowledge that is close by. In the same way, while we might not know who Sandra Bullock's fifth husband is, I'm not sure if she has a fifth husband. Uh, but if she does, I'd be able to Google it and find out right away. In a similar sense, navigation has been hindered by the use of technology, or internet specifically. There was a study that showed that, quote, in the condition that required memory-based navigation, there was an increased activity in the hippocampus, which numerous previous studies have linked to memory and spatial navigation, and also in part of the prefrontal cortex that has been implicated in spatial planning by earlier work. By contrast, these increases were not observed when participants relied on experimenter-provided navigation instructions that function as a GPS. So the translation of that is when people relied on their brains to get from uh, point A to point B, there's an increased activity in the hippocampus, which is useful for memory and spatial navigation. So driving, right? In contrast, when people use a GPS system or didn't have to rely on memory to get from point A to point B, there weren't the same uh, brain functions, and thus is a proof that the internet is dumbing us down. So some of the rebuttals and its objectives is because the internet has taken a huge, or the internet has been a huge advancement for mankind and has allowed us to be more informed than ever. So a huge part of this has been the dissemination of information. So this is a quote from Peter Norvig from the article. Suppose I'm interested in the guidance computers on Apollo spacecraft in the 1960s. My local library has no books on that specific subject, just 18 books about the Apollo missions in general. I could hunt through those or turn to Google, which returns 45,000 pages, including a definitive encyclopedia article and instructions for building a unit. So, while in olden times we had to search for books, and those books may or may not have had the information that we needed, you could Google it and find infinite, near infinite information on that specific topic. So in that aspect, the the internet is good because it provides information at the click of a button, which is both efficient and leads to more learning because you're learning things faster. And if you want to know something super niche, you can learn it super quickly. A second rebuttal to the internet is making it stupider, sure, is that it advanced humans, right? So the internet and the internet age has caused a great boom in global collaboration and has improved access to information, as previously stated, um, global collaboration and efficient communication. To quote, technology allows individuals and organizations to collaborate and work together regardless of their physical location. This has fostered a global economy and a more interconnected world. So just because uh, I live in Indiana, United States, and somebody wants to do business with me in Hong Kong, we wouldn't be separated by that. We can do a business that would bolster the economy for both Hong Kong and the United States, and it creates better intercultural collaboration and communication, which is an advancement. The closer that we can get to each other and empathize with one another, the better we can become as the human race. So my rebuttal and conclusion to this is, while it's true that the internet has helped disseminate information and advance the human race, it has not come without some sacrifice of the human mind. And to be ignorant of that is to forget the amount of deaths caused by cars, or the ostracization of astronomers in the early days of stargazing. What I mean by that is Peter Norvig uh, likened the internet to the advent of the automobile and the telescope. And while those have both provided great means of transportation and greater knowledge on the stars that we live under or around, it hasn't gone without damage in one way or another. So, in the case of cars, in the early 20th century, nobody knew how to use them because they were new, and thus led to a lot of deaths. And even today, with as many safety features as we have, people die every day from cars. Uh, so, new technology isn't without its drawbacks. Uh, and in the same way, the internet is harming humans by making us quote unquote stupider. Uh, in a similar way, while now we have the Hubble telescope, the James telescope that lets us image black holes, supernovas, nebulae, it's not without the forefathers of astronomy being ostracized by saying, maybe we aren't the center of the universe. So, while new technology is always great and does advance the human race, it's not without unadvancing, devolving the human race in another sense. So, here's some of the references. Uh, I hope you find my point of view enthralling. Like, subscribe. I don't know.